Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. My name is Artem and here is the news. For 479 days, Ukraine defends itself against the Russian invasion. The New York Times released an article on possible causes of the destruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant, reports Ukrainska Pravda. The journalists, referring to experts in their own investigation, believed that the undermining of the underwater passage to the turbine hole is the most likely cause of the disaster. Engineers from Ukraine and the US stated in a comment to the media outlet that there was an Achilles heel deep inside the dam. They pointed out that the dam was built during Soviet times, so Moscow had every page of the engineering drawings and knew where the vulnerability was. The evidence reviewed by the New York Times, from original engineering plans to interviews with engineers who studied dam failures, confirms that the dam collapse was no accident. At the same time, the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine informed that as of June 17, 16 people are already known to have died and 31 people are considered missing in the result of the Kakhovka dam destruction. US President Joe Biden said he opposes simplifying requirements for Ukraine on its path to NATO membership, reports Liga. He stressed that Ukraine needs to meet the same standards as other countries. At the same time, the American president acknowledged that the Ukrainian army now meets the standards of NATO countries, but he expressed doubt about whether the Ukrainian security system as a whole meets the standards and whether it is corrupt. Earlier, Axios reported that Biden supported NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg's proposal that Ukraine does not need to implement the membership action plan to join the alliance. We would really appreciate if you could rate us, ideally with 5 stars, in the apps where you are listening to this podcast: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, and others. This way more people would learn about the highlights from Ukraine and truth about Russia's invasion. Denmark is ready to send F-16 fighters to Ukraine, reports Militarny. At the same time, Danish acting Minister of Defense Troels Lund Poulsen stressed that this will happen only if the United States, which manufactures this aircraft, approves this action. Denmark has 43 F-16 fighters, 30 of which are in active use. However, they are now replacing them with modern F-35 fighters. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin met a delegation of African leaders who visited Kyiv before, where they had to hide from a Russian missile attack, reports Radio Liberty. During the meeting, Putin showed the text which he called a treaty on permanent neutrality and security guarantees for Ukraine. According to him, the agreement was prepared at the talks between Moscow and Kyiv in Istanbul in March 2022. He stated that the signing of the document, which consisted of 18 articles, was disrupted by Ukraine. In the appendix, as follows from his words, the maximum size of the Ukrainian army could be indicated. Later, Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov commented on one of the topics that interested African countries, grain export, reports Ukrainska Pravda. Peskov said that the grain initiative has no future and Moscow sees no reason to continue it. The Black Sea Grain Initiative is an agreement between the UN and Turkey with Russia and Ukraine launched on 22nd of July 2022 to enable ships to transport grain from Ukraine. French YouTube channel TF1 published a report filmed at the positions of the Russian military in the occupied territory of Ukraine, reports European Pravda. In the video, journalists don't mention the wider context of Russia's war against Ukraine or who is the aggressor. They only show Russian positions, weapons they use, and that invaders expect a counteroffensive of the armed forces of Ukraine and have been preparing for it for a long time. Spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Oleg Nikolenko, said that this video hits new lows of journalism, reports TSN. They tout the so-called might of Russia's military. This dishonors those it has killed. He also reminded that the media representatives visited occupied territories violating Ukraine's law. Thank you for listening to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast. We are a commercial initiative of just 2 people and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.